Welcome to the American Made and Paid Show, the home of free speech and independent thought.
The big story is freedom of speech is really in trouble. The far left knows that at any time they can call for a sponsor boycott of anyone they despise.
It is right here, right now, where you'll get your weekly dose of unfiltered truth.
It's non-negotiable. Pre-existing conditions will be protected. This president has said this as a candidate.
Insight.
Very few people I know could have handled it. We can never, ever let this happen to another president again.
And information that challenges the American way of life.
Welcome back, everyone, to the American Made and Paid Show. I'm your host, Zach King. I got Professor Dreg with me here today. Thank you so much for tuning into our show. Today is Tuesday, May 7th, 2019, and today we're going to jump into a couple of different topics here surrounding, police, progressivism, the lack of education, the lack of original thought. Sometimes that often happens in a lot of these echo chambers. And the idea behind this show, I think now that we're over 20 episodes in, is to really get our thoughts out there and to be able to formulate our own opinions and theories on a variety of different topics, not just, street conservatism, but eventually with this show, my vision is to dive into some other like social issues and heck, even talk about business and finance and all that other stuff, because I've said this prior to the show, right? This is all related. It's the American Made and Paid Show, which ideally means it's all interconnected. Part of running a good business, part of being a good salesman, and I'm learning to be one, is all related to this. And it's funny because we send money to Uncle Sam, we send money to Congress every single year, and we think that these people who are there are actually managing our money properly. And a lot of these people, I've said it before, can barely balance a national budget, let alone their own checkbooks. So why do we continue to send these people money? So what I'm trying to say is, for all you listeners out there, is that this show is going to expand. It's going to go into some more other stuff, even in regards to taxes and entrepreneurship. Professor Dreg holds extensive experience in law, or at least law practice, even though he's not an attorney. Not a lawyer. He comes from a medical background. I mean, for a guy who's been around for several decades, and being as intelligent as he is, he's going to have a lot of this to be able to expand on. And, I'm just happy to be able to unpack a lot of these things. But let's get right to it. So just to kind of lighten up here, because that was mighty formal. This show is not supposed to be formal, but that was just like a very, very formal radio opening. You sent me a video this morning, a couple of videos with, the whole regards to police being uneducated and asserting and people giving up their rights. And we're going to talk specifically about Sandra Bland. Sandra Bland was another one of those, you could say police victims, right? That unfortunately both the left and the right blow out of proportion, but we're going to dissect it here. And the key here was she was arrested for, I think it was being on her phone, and then eventually died in prison. Is that correct?
Well, okay. So basically she got arrested. You have to watch the video.
I did watch the video.
Yeah. Sad. No, it's a completely sad. I mean, for me, it's sad, but here's what happened. She got arrested for not making a signal, not using her signal,
Yeah, it's crazy.
But the funny thing is, the reason why she didn't signal was because the police officer, and this was caught on the video.
Uh-huh.
She explained to the police officer why she didn't signal. The cop was speeding, behind her. So she just moved over to the right. So that way he could pass her, or either, I guess he was pulling her over. And either way, so he just automatically got real aggressive and ends up taking her to jail. She commits suicide in jail. Long story short, she committed suicide in jail. So anyway, so that's what happened in that video. But I'm going to do something different today. I'm going to start by saying,
bring it on,
what the conclusion is. The conclusion is Asian people are so willing to give up their rights. That is why that bamboo ceiling exists. Because if you watch the video and if you see how calm this Miss Bland was, who was black, and how she not even confronted the cop. She just explained herself.
Submitted to the cop.
What? No, but not even. She didn't submit. She was asked a question. She answered honestly,
Oh.
and because she answered, honestly,
Yeah.
and she was making certain demands about her rights and trying to be let go, they arrested her.
Okay, I see.
But that's anyway. But the moral of today's story is Asians are too willing to give up their rights, and that's why they're at the same level of black people, just on the different end of the spectrum.
We talked briefly before this podcast started, and for a lot of my own listeners, they know that I'm a big advocate for, these Asian sort of success in the United States, which is not really in part due to racism necessarily, even though we've had historically racist laws. It's the problem with our character traits in that we're not very assertive, we're not pressing, and we don't mobilize and defend ourselves the way the black community does. Just to be strictly, like we were talking kind of more casually. For example, if you get in a black person's face, I have to admit, most of the time they fight back. They stand their ground and they fight back. With Asians, we are too, I guess, easygoing and too willing to actually just say, and actually, you know what? Part of the honest, we're too compliant. That's the word I was looking for. Not submissive. We're compliant, right? Compliant can have a lot of different meanings. So for a lot of people, it's not just compliance with people who ask you to do something, especially when it comes to authority, but also rules and laws and structures. Asians in our culture, we just respond very well to that type of stuff. It might just be because of the way we were governed for however many hundreds of thousands of years, but that's aside the point. One thing I want to say is the reason why a lot of this stuff actually goes down with what we were talking about even in an earlier episode, where why is it that Asians are getting beat up in the streets by black people is partly also due to this, right? Unless you're one of those roof Koreans that takes no crap from black people, but they're few and far between. Not all Asians are like that. There's like did you see this in the SF gate? Some old Chinese lady was like kicked to the, I don't know, to the ground of a muni bus or whatever by some black guy. That stuff happens, right? But anyways, what I'm trying to say is it ties in somewhat nicely. And Sandra Bland, this may sound a little crass and probably not very appropriate, but kind of didn't really act like a black person. Was just very compliant. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, the video, that's the thing. She, I don't want to say because I don't know her at all.
Okay.
But my guess would be that she was a progressive.
Okay, so real quick, before you jump into that, I want to clarify something. You know how Black Lives Matter is essentially just a leftist mob that's basically coined all cops as being bad? That's typically what Democrats push, right? We're talking about the incompetence or lack of education or perhaps even aggressiveness of cops because they're in a position of power where they're, like you said, they're your judge, jury, and executioner. So why is it, where's the fine line here? Because that's what Democrats push, but conservatives are all about blue lives. They're all about cops. We support our cops. And I do support our cops, but in instances like this.
No, but that's the thing. So, but this is the whole thing. I'm glad you brought that up because now here's
what I do.
Time. No, tangent time. So here's the thing. Conservatives are all about blue lives matter.
Right.
Right. But then that's just another way of giving up your rights. And which is opposite of what they stand for, right? Blue lives matter, but then they're teaching you how to be compliant and just give away your rights.
Even if the cop may be corrupt because they have all the power, they got a gun and all that.
So now you have the Democrats these cops are all racist and all this other stuff, but they're the ones that tell the cops what to do and how to police because that's how it's done.
That's interesting because I mentioned that, right? London Breed controls the San Francisco police force. So the buck stops with whoever is in the position of leadership in these progressive cities, right? Look at what happens in Portland all the time when you got Antifa, those Antifa riots, and the cops are actually instructed to not do their job. They're basically told to stand down, don't interfere. That's stupid, right? But this is in cities that have Democrat leaderships, Democrat mayors, because the mayor is the person that basically is in control, nominates the police commissioner, Tells the
Well,
police force.
they're the one. Okay, for most cities, the mayor and city council, they hire the police chief and they give them a whole bunch of stuff that they want done.
Right.
And they will, and they're actually in charge. And
Hey, there's some background noise coming from your end. Is that the video that you just left playing?
No, that's something else.
Okay, my bad. Sorry, continue your thought. I didn't mean to
should I lower this? Is that better? I don't know. Can you still hear it?
Yeah. But it's fine. Don't touch anything, otherwise it messes up.
Don't worry. Okay, so anyway, I forgot. Oh yeah, the mayor. So the mayor are the people who tell the cops what to do and how to do things. And so if you notice in progressive cities, you will see the stuff that happened to Sandra Bland will always happen. Why? Because they willingly, well, not even willingly, they have no idea that they're voting for the people who let these cops do whatever it is that they do. And in this case, this cop admits to being scared and feeling threatened several times. And even he doesnhe realize that he was the one causing all the tension. He asked her, "What are you doing?" And, then he asked, "Why are you upset?" And then so she told him, "I'm upset because I'm getting pulled over." That's a natural response. So it's the mayor's. And so anyway, so that cop, he was obviously not that educated. He wasn't that smart. And who's in charge of the hiring of the police? The city people, the city council, the mayor, whoever. They set the standards to how police are actually hired.
Okay.
So all these Democrats, all these black people are like, F the police, F the police. Well, then all you have to do is vote for somebody at the local level to say, look, if you want to be a police officer in my city or in my county as a sheriff, you need a master's degree. You need a master's in psychology or behavior function analysis. You can set the standards for your police force. You can, but they never do.
So what are the requirements? Let's talk about them. Let's talk about why it leads to a lot of basically crazy people who are power crazy because they got a gun.
Okay, but before we get into that, let me make this one point.
Okay.
Now think about this, because I really want to tie this into how Asians are really, really, really responsible for a lot of this stuff.
How Asians are responsible? You're gonna point the big finger at us?
Yeah, well, because we've already established that progressives, if you are a progressive, you are automatically a racist. But you're a racist not just against blacks, but against Chinese. Because I don't know if you guys remember how it was defined institutional racism by this one counselor. Institutional racism is only against two groups of people: African Americans, not blacks from Africa, but African Americans, blacks born here, native to this country, and Chinese people.
Mm-hmm.
And just by coincidence, I gotta laugh when I say coincidence, but anyway, through social engineering, aka coincidence, blacks are at the bottom and Chinese are at the top of our spectrum, and neither one has no power whatsoever. Somehow, some way, the mediocre, just by coincidence, people coming in from Harvard, Princeton, Yale, all believe in that progressive ideology, all believe in Darwin, all believe in that crap, that cult life behavior. That's what we're going to call it, cult life.
No, it is.
It's not bug life, it's cult life. That's what they push in the Ivy League. They push this weird cult life. Yeah.
It becomes a club, and they call it that openly. It becomes a club.
Yeah, no, but what's really sad is it's a suicidal behavior, and Sandra Bland, I don't know if her name was Sandra, but Miss Bland killed herself. You know what I mean? She is, and that's basically what this cult does. Anyway, so long story short, blacks at the bottom, Asians, specifically more like you'll see more Chinese at the top than you would Koreans. So you got the Chinese being controlled and the blacks being controlled by the same methodology. It's insane. And I keep trying to tell everybody, you should learn from black people. They're trying to get out from under, because this lady, obviously she had a job. She was articulate. I mean, she smoked, but beyond that, I don't know what else she did that was bad. But she actually knew her rights. She was like, hey, look, just give me the ticket so I can go and I'll see you in court. And but the guy kept saying no, 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 no. And she ended up getting arrested. And I don't know what happened and why she committed suicide in jail. But anyway, but we'll never know. But just from that video, you see how wrong this police officer was. And nobody on the right recognizes that at all. They just don't see it. They don't think, well, you just got to comply. Why? Why do you have to give up your rights if you believe you are sovereign?
I think it's because of this, and I think this is where the real independent thinking comes in, right? And it's not talking points. So give me a couple of minutes. I'm one of those people where it takes me a while to arrive at my point. I'm like,
no, go for it.
But this is the context. No, because you actually gave me an epiphany here. Right wingers and left wingers, right? So progressives and conservatives, or so-called conservatives that identify that way, not people who are truly sovereign, believe right now at face value with Blue Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter, right? If you really think about the core of that, that negates any kind of accountability whatsoever, because one is blame and the other is blameless. I want you to think about that, because that, believe it or not, actually ties into Christianity, which is a whole nother tangent. But there's
no. It's not. I was going to say something based on what you just said, and it really does delve into Christianity.
Right. But so here's the thing. Black Lives Matter, that's blame. Blue Lives Matter, that's blameless. You're missing the point. It's about people not understanding what their rights are. And just because we do respect our cops, we can't blanket the statement with everybody who wears a blue uniform is going to be okay. Some people do abuse their power, because we've already pre-framed this conversation by saying some of these cops are just not educated. We talked about this in the first week, where it's like when you get stopped, right? Sometimes it's just like, that's just the way it is. And if they're forced to patrol dangerous neighborhoods, progressive neighborhoods, maybe there's more crime. They are not prepared for that, so they react accordingly. Now, to take it back to Sandra Bland, this might have been, a cop that was corrupt, and based on what we can see, just he obviously was abusing his power a little bit more. But that's the problem. That is the problem is Blue Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter, and they're both wrong. So because one's like I want people to get this through their heads who are listening. One is about blame and one is about being blameless, which actually are both completely ignorant of the issue itself, which is lack of qualification, lack of education.
True.
Right? But that's what I'm trying to say. So am I saying this because I think all cops are racist? No. But there are some that are, and there are some that are honest and protect the community and watch out for you. I get it. And I think that that's where talking points and echo chambers don't foster a lot of independent thought, because all you have to do is present an alternative. Like, you're a conservative, right?
Oh, yeah.
Talking about this, people are going to be like, wait a minute, don't you stand with cops? It's like, well, that's not the point. The point is people are giving up their rights, and it doesn't mean that just because you do that, everybody is going to be respectful of your rights. And if they know you don't know your rights, it gives them more leverage to question you more unconditionally. I think that's the problem with Sandra Bland. It's like, over what? Her lights weren't working, or turn signal not working? I don't know. That's stupid.
Her explanation is the best. She said the cop came up on her speeding, so she just pulled over to the right to get in his way. And then all of a sudden she's getting a ticket. And
dude, that ties into the whole, like, if they stop you for something, they can get you on 30,000 different moving violations.
No, they can't. Because, and I remember this, and this is how you always get out of an extensive ticket. You ask the police officer, why are they getting pulled over? And then as soon as they tell you, like the way this cop did, hey, I pulled you over because you didn't use your signal. And that's it. The investigation is over. All you have to do at that point is give your your driver's license and your proof of insurance, which is a scam. We established that already. So that's all you have to do. And once they did that, that's it. It's over. They cannot check your car. They don't have any other thing to do unless they're telling you, well, I smell marijuana in your car, so therefore I'm going to check your car for any illegal substances. They don't have a right to search your car just because they pulled you over. Once they tell you why they stopped you, that is it. And that's case law has already established that over and over and over again. So there is no need to look for evidence of indicia. There is no, and remember, I am not an attorney. I'm just a guy who knows how to read. So all of they cannot, their exigent circumstances no longer exist because the situation has been diffused. So there is no need to destroy evidence. There is no need to run away. There is none of that. Just give the ticket and go. So anyway, but my point is this: that police officer, like that, Sandra Bland, were both uneducated people, and the power is too immense. Because I don't want people thinking, oh, it's a bad cop. No, it's not a bad cop. For whatever reasons, we are giving the least educated in our society, people with degrees from community college, and look, it's the truth.
Associates. Yeah, associates.
If that's all you have, I guarantee you, there are, like that TV show, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader?
Wow, that's an old show.
Well, no, but it's coming back. But those fifth grade questions come from like elite private school fifth grade education.
Yeah, some of those questions I remember when they asked on the show, I'm like, I wouldn't freaking know that.
But that's my point. There are people in the fifth grade better educated than all the police officers on the force.
Yeah, there were some smart kids on that show, if I remember.
This is the thing. How in the hell do we give uneducated people the power to be God when they could choose to either kill life or preserve life? We are giving these cops a God complex. Why? Because maybe we have a God complex. And then it goes to my next point that you made me think about was conservatives don't even exist. Just like how Christians, for me, it's hard to find a real conservative like it is to find a real Christian based on my limited understanding of knowledge of Christianity, because I really don't know much about it. But I think I struggle with, because I don't really know much about God, pretty much like how Jews don't know much about God. Because here's the thing, and it goes into yesterday about the cult thing. I honestly believe Jewish people are a cult. It's just how it is, because the philosophy is too twisted. And then, I don't know why, but that's...
Well, let's stick to that Jewish people are a cult thing, right? Now, people calm down, because anytime you talk about Jews...
Well, yeah, hold on. Let me finish this point, though, because this is the thing. I honestly believe that Romans thing that we talked about, that is the key to almost every aspect of life. Whatever, I forgot who you said wrote that, but...
Paul,
Romans,
apostle.
Yeah, I don't even know who that is.
I guess he wasn't really. Was he an apostle? Yeah, he became an apostle.
I don't even know what that is.
You got to read the New Testament. Anyways, future episodes over time.
No, either I wish I had some understanding, but whoever this Paul guy was, that honestly was the answer. The whole thing about spirituality, it's not spirituality, it's spiritual minded. So I don't know what that means in particular, but whatever that is, whenever I discover that's the key to everything in life. And that's the basis of, because here's the thing that conservatives, if you're a conservative, you're sovereign. You cannot be sovereign unless you have peace. And if you don't have peace, like inner peace and peace with your surroundings, I don't care if it's the worst Samoan in the world, and that just wants to kill you and says, "Oof, I get the guy." Not even none of that stuff. You gotta have peace even with that mother. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you don't have peace with those guys, you're gonna be screwed. And that's the whole point. That is the key. You got to get out of that, because what does the carnal mind like? Because it was really trippy. It's like, how that? I mean, it's more than just sex. Like the carnal mind isn't just sex. It's way more than just sex. Because the carnal mind is death, according to that guy. You know what I mean? I've never even heard of that, but that's what he said. So what does that mean? That means the carnal mind isn't just about lust and sex. It's also about greed. It's also about the gathering of material things. It's about power.
It's about all of those things that human beings inevitably, unfortunately, if they don't have it under control, leads to their downfall. So gluttony and greed and power hungry, all that stuff.
Have you ever seen those cooking shows and the guy goes, I just had an orgasm after one bite of food?
Yeah.
Seriously, that's carnal mind. And it's funny because carnal sounds like carne, which means meat. and that's just and the Arby's commercial, we got the meats, and then the guy for sandwiches because they don't want people thinking dirty thoughts.
All the subtext that's everywhere, all the subtext.
No, but I'm telling you now, that's why, like, I honestly, there was this other movie with Kevin Spacey, and even he said he tried to compare Gandhi, who I have no respect for, with Jesus Christ as the two greatest philosophers in the history of mankind, because Kevin Spacey played an alien dude from another planet. And that was the whole premise, was like, Jesus and Gandhi were the greatest philosophers, and mankind has never grasped that philosophy. And then my entire life, I think, because it's bullshit. That's why nobody ever, because look at what Gandhi did. Gandhi, he created Pakistan, who was a nuclear power now, and killing people, and that's not. But then I honestly used to think that Jesus was like Gandhi, just turning the other cheek, but I never really knew that Romans part. You know what I mean? So, and that's
Gandhi himself had his fair share of dirty laundry. I mean, that guy was messing around with little girls. I don't want to
say he was gay, but Gandhi was gay. No, it's true. Ask Baynard Ruskin.
Yeah, I want to go back and talk a little bit about, before you went on to that point, and this is always good because we can check each other, about the Jews and the cult. Right now, obviously, people get very, very bent out of shape, around any kind of conversation regarding the Jews. The Jews have been used as a sort of, like, almost like being a Jew has either been a symbol of pride for a lot of people or a symbol of victimhood status. I'm just going to call it as it is. People use it whenever it's convenient. People use it to try to downplay or play up conspiracy. But my point is this, because there's Jews, as in like people who are actual like Hebrews from, I don't know, the original land of Israel. I mean, now it was put there in the past 70 years. And then there's Jews as in the religion, people who are converts to Judaism or born into it. And the problem is, this is going to meet your point nicely, is that it's when you said something earlier that spurred this thought, which was, I have a hard time finding a real Christian, just like I have a hard time finding a real conservative. And then you immediately said, well, Jews are like a cult. Well, that's the thing, right? It's like it doesn't really have any kind of real explicit meaning for a lot of the average people these days. And if you talk to like a Hasidic Jew, an Orthodox Jew, and all of the different sects are slightly different, right? And then there are some people that just say they're Jewish, and honestly, every time I hear that at face value, I have no idea what that means. But it almost feels like you belong to some tribe or something. But my point is, it's almost like here, for example, when I find out real quick, usually like, maybe if I can't tell that someone's Jewish, I immediately don't know what to think, but to think that it means you belong to something. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know if that, are you like, you practice, like, you follow Torah, you go to synagogue, or, bar mitzvahs, or is it just, I'm Israeli, or you Hebrew, So I know that's kind of generic, but that's kind of what stirred the thought a little bit, is the idea that the meaning has been diluted to mean perhaps a lot of things in an effort to either fool people or for people to use it out of convenience. And that happens more often than you'd like to believe. I'll just keep it there.
But okay, so I'm going to say this, and I know this is going to get people ruffled, but in my opinion, a conservative is just an atheist Christian. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's just an atheist, but they believe in everything Christianity probably stands for, but they're atheists, probably. But a Christian,
I can see that.
A Christian is a Christian, and that's their faith, but then for the atheists who believe in everything like the way Christians do,
Mm-hmm.
then they'd just be called conservative because they just don't know Jesus. So if you don't know Jesus, you can't call yourself a Christian. So therefore, you're just a conservative person, because in theory, conservatism is being sovereign. And that's what Christians are. Christians are sovereign people. But the thing is, they're inclusive. Like, conservatives don't care who you are. As long as you're sovereign, it's okay. You're going to be okay as a conservative with other conservatives as long as you guys are all sovereign. But Christians are already sovereign based on this thing from Romans. If you believe in what that guy Paul said in Romans, you're a sovereign person, because somehow, some way, you manage to escape the carnal mind, which is extremely difficult to do. It really is. And that's part of the key of being sovereign is how do you get rid of all of that?
Okay, so let's actually expand on that a little bit more, because we talked about sovereignty. That's the word.
Yeah, sovereignty.
Sovereignty. Got to say it again to get it in my head. Sovereignty as it pertains to conservatives. And I know it kind of evolved from talking about the streets to how it manifests in Christianity. But here's another thing. And I know we talked about this off air at one point, and it was like a story. I might have already shared it on the podcast, but for people who didn't know about this, Buddhists in to some degree, right? Now, I'm not trying to tie this into Christian values here. I'm talking about something separate, which is basically purging all of that unnecessary stuff. You talked about the carnal mind, right? And how that can lead down to paths of greed or corruption, immorality, whatever it may be. Think about Buddhists for a second, right? I mean, these are literally people who all they have with them is just the clothes that they wear on their backs. And it arouses a particular story as to what that term of sovereignty really means, where a lot of material possessions or perhaps even human pursuits are not as meaningful to you as finding, keyword here, inner peace. So there's a story that I was told, by one of my close mentors, where he went out to, I believe it was Nepal, and Nepal gets hit with like 10 to 15 earthquakes a year minimum, some crazy thing like that.
Oh, like,
yeah. This country gets ravaged. We're talking like it's at the foot of the Himalayas, so it's right on a tectonic plate. So you're going to get like a crazy amount of earthquakes, and we're talking devastating ones. So Kathmandu, the city in Nepal, gets just completely destroyed more often than you would think. So every time you go there, it always looks like a bit of a rebuilt, just barely hanging by a thread, kind of sewn together, tattered like city. And there's a story I'll never forget, because it was like, this was right after a giant earthquake that had happened. And there was a Buddhist temple there where the temple had been destroyed probably 100 times over in all of its existence.
Yeah.
And this is sovereignty right here at its peak. Literally, like, there's a newscaster talking about, oh, the earthquake hit the city, and the Buddhist monk, all he cares about is like rebuilding the temple. So he's taking each brick, dusting it off, and rebuilding it, piling it back on. And he does that every single time, because now you could say that, okay, he's building his temple, but it shows you that even after all of that, if all you care about is inner peace, everything else is secondary. So you don't even actually care about the fact that your temple or your home was destroyed in an earthquake. You got no material possessions, and you're not in pursuit of any kind of lustful passions of the flesh, if you want to call it that, right? To keep it biblical.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, because it's just like this.
But here's the thing, though.
What?
The problem with the monk is that he doesn't know how to earn money.
Yeah, I know. So that's where we do,
because, and that's why I
but
find
that's not the point. The point is being detached from everything. And
but that's why that too is also wrong, because the people who are too detached can never reproduce. And I almost get, I mean, I don't know, because I'm not a biblical scholar, but I'm almost certain we are put on this planet just based on biology to have making baby sessions. That's what we're built for that.
Right.
So if you detach yourself from that completely, then we are going to be, screwed as a species, scientifically speaking. We'll be like extinct in like in 100 years, we'll be extinct. If everybody did what those monks did, we would be extinct. So how can you be sovereign and still, have a family and all that other stuff? And that's the real question like a lot of people don't have, because then they get tribal. And then, progressive ideology takes hold because it has. Progressive ideology has taken hold in this country, because I'm not saying Buddhism is a cult. I mean, it could be a bona fide religion, because I know a lot of Buddhists who actually do have families and all this other stuff. But at the same time, look at how Asian people have become so submissive. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. And it's like they are controlled and dominated by progressives. And specifically white progressives. Same thing with blacks. Blacks, they lost their faith. And it's kind of because the one thing I do know is the Old Testament. And so from my understanding, black people were like the original Jews, They've been enslaved throughout time. And every time they lose their way, something bad always happens to them. So when they got freed, and the thing is, it wasn't the Jewish faith that freed slaves. It didn't. The Jewish faith didn't free the black people in this country. It was technically Christianity. It was and think about this. In 1912, what type of Republicans didn't join the Progressive Party?
The Christians.
Exactly.
Not the atheist conservatives like you talked about.
Or not even that, or the racist ones.
Yeah. Because
a lot of fake Christians became progressives. And I'm not saying like Pete Buttigieg is a fake Christian only because he's gay.
Judge.
Yeah, Buttigieg. I'm not saying he's a fake Christian because he's gay, because maybe he's not sleeping with any men. But, how can you be like a Jewish guy or like honestly be a Jew or a Muslim and engage in that kind of behavior when it's clearly against your religion? You know what I mean? But that's my point. A lot of fake Christians joined the progressive ideology, and they still remained quote unquote conservative. And because they're conservative, they're still progressive. So you could be a progressive conservative or you could be a progressive liberal, like Judge. Peter Judge is obviously a left Christian, but I don't think that's a real Christian. I think a real Christian is going to be a sovereign Christian.
Well, here's the thing about being a sovereign Christian too, is that how you were saying in some earlier episodes, like I could coerce people and manipulate them either through two ways, brute strength or sex. If you think about a sovereign Christian, right now, Christian in that term, sovereign Christian, conservative, you're not as likely to fall under the influence of, I guess, sweet-talking progressives that are Christians that are in power. So the thing is, you're not likely to be bought out necessarily. So because you know what I mean? Even
exactly.
Claim to be on your side and all that. And that's the thing with Buttigieg, right? Is there's a lot of people that are, I guess, like milquetoast or lukewarm. I know that's the term people use for just kind of, you know what I mean? You're just kind of, you're whatever. and
you're vanilla.
Vanilla. And they eat it up. They're like, this is great. This guy's young. It's like, and that's unfortunately, man, this is not this is just how America is right now. There's just a lot of dumb people. A lot of people, like, here's the thing. If you've got this many people who are blind to people like, I'm just going to say it, like Candace Owens in her past, it's like that. What does that tell you about so-called people who are free of the victim narrative and independent thought?
No, honestly, it makes me not want to believe in God. That's what it does. Like for me personally, whenever I see people like Candace Owens or
just because there are people that
anybody.
claim to believe in God doesn't mean they do. The road to him is a narrow one, not the wide road. If it's the wide road, everybody would be doing that. So
Yeah, but I'm telling you now, but I'm telling, I don't know, like, because I know you know this stuff, but here's the thing. I honestly believe, because I mean, just my limited knowledge on, Black history through the Bible lens, like the biblical, like Genesis lens, it's like blacks have always been punished for not following God's rules. And I think God made it very simple for black people when he goes, you know what, maybe this stuff is too complicated. So I'm going to make it real simple. I'm going to bring down this dude, Jesus, and then I'm going to even simplify it even more. And even still, they still don't listen. And that's the thing that makes me go crazy. I'm thinking, and then you got Candace Owens. She's really going to be like, the people who I respect who happen to be black would be, we talked about this, Sowell, Carson, Herman Cain. See, like Herman Cain is a really, really bad example of a Christian male. He just
explain.
No, well, I don't know much, but because like you just hear rumors. But the thing is like this: if this dude, he speaks to, like, you have to listen to him. If you listen to him speak, he has that jive turkey in him. I don't know what people, if they even know what jive turkey means, but
yeah, I've heard that term. I don't use it very often because what does that mean actually?
Because it's okay. So a jive turkey is like a person who, they think they're cool, and you know what I mean, but they really aren't cool. Like they're kind of like, he's a nerd, so you can't run around pretending to be like a ladies' man or like a trendsetter. You're just not, because there's some people who are just like Prince for whatever reasons, and this, like, because Prince is a good example.
Yeah.
Prince was like not that he was a real Christian, but he really honestly believed in God and Jesus and stuff like that. But because, he was on drugs half the time and he couldn't control his penis, he was just confused. But that boy was given some talent, right? But so that guy, he was going to be a trendsetter. For whatever reasons, God gave him a lot of gifts.
Oh, yeah. Very, very talented, very charismatic.
And so
women would just flock to him.
Yeah, so there was no way that guy could ever be jive. Never. But Herman Cain, that dude was intellectual. He was trying to be like cool and stuff, but you can't, like, that's just how it works. Just some dudes don't have it. Some dudes do, like, because it's white people believe all black dudes are cool. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, all black guys are. No, they're not. It's just like anybody else. You got your cool ones like Prince, and then you got your nerdy ones like Herman Cain or Ben Carson or Thomas Sowell. You know, and it's the truth. Not everybody can be cool,
Yeah.
So anyway, so Herman Cain, when you hear him speak, he acts like he's cool and shit, like he got something, but he's not. He's not himself. So
right.
So, and my thing is, if you honestly believe in that Roman stuff, you wouldn't have the need to try to be cool or try to, give yourself a different perception. Because I think that's what the whole thing, like when you're thinking with their carnal mind, because dude, that's what we do in the streets. You got to have an image. You got to, that's how you hustle. You got to be able to, like be a chameleon. Like whatever the environment is, you have to blend to it in order to survive and eventually go for the kill and make that money. But that's what you got to do. That's exactly what you got to do. And, Herman Cain couldn't do it because he doesn't have it in him. So if he was to be true and be a real good example, he'd just be himself. Say, hey, look, this is what I had to do. I'm a rocket scientist. I had to do all of these things. I went to the military. This is what I did. I'm straight edge. I don't womanize. I'm. You know why he's not a womanizer? Because he's too ugly. It's the truth. You can't be a womanizer if you're not at least manly. I'm not saying Herman Cain wasn't manly, but it's the truth. He wasn't. He's not a manly man. Like I could see Thomas Sowell getting down. But I couldn't see Ben Carson or the other one, Herman Cain, getting down. You know, because they don't have it, but Thomas Sowell, he does. You know what I mean? Like Thomas Sowell, you know that dude when he was younger, he was getting laid a lot. And he admits it too. He was like, you know, he admitted it. He's like, look, I was getting free money. So what did he do? He was not working. He wasn't had to do anything because
that would explain the fact that he said he used to be a Marxist before he was like the most conservative.
Oh Jesus, really?
But a lot of these economists, because they find out how stupid it is, they find out it doesn't work. Because and university system. So when you become a fellow and you study economics, everyone's a Marxist, and then you come out of it, you're like, wait a minute, that's not how it works.
Oh, see, I didn't know that about. See, I knew it. See, because but that's what, and it goes back to Ice-T's song. You like a nigga could understand another nigga. It's just how it goes. Like, and I was like, oh, that's why, because he was a Marxist. That makes sense. So no, but it's true. Like, if you're a Marxist, you're gonna be a womanizer. It's just how it works. People don't understand that, but on the streets, you depend on that. Like, it's easy for a guy like Thomas Sowell. You know, if you're a communist or a Marxist, dude, you could have like the Mandarins. Dude, the Mandarins had their pick of women. It's just how it works.
What do you mean by the Mandarins? The Mandarins, that's a language, not a group of people.
No, it was a group of people.
Oh.
The Mandarin word, that's why it's called the Mandarin language. Everybody speaks Mandarin because that's what the Mandarin people wanted. I'm not kidding you.
Mandarin, yeah.
No, but it's the truth. Like, dude, it was the Mandarins were a group of people. Even the comic book, their villain was the Mandarin of Iron Man. So like,
yeah.
Because what? Because the Mandarin people were very violent, very cruel people. They were like, but there's I don't care what race, what country. There's always a group of socialist-like types or communist types. And it's always the same, whether it's the king, whether it's like the Mandarin people, whether it's any of those people. It's insane. But they use the same tactics. And guess what? They have their pick of the women. They just do. And it's not because they're the warriors. Because the warrior types, they're happy with their little lot of women. Right. But people like, I don't want to, because I don't know Thomas Sowell. I didn't even know he was a Marxist at one time.
I mean, when he was, this is young. This is decades ago. This is even before he was before we're aware of his writings on, you know.
No, but dude, that dude is but look, I respect Thomas Sowell because that dude, he is, I love him. Because I'll send you that video of him going up against the Secretary of the Treasurer of Pennsylvania in 1980. It was, that dude was rocking that afro and he was good, like, but you knew he had some soul to him. But anyway,
well, you see, because he was saying all this stuff he's older than most.
He wasn't a Marxist then. He was
no. But that's what I'm saying is, like, this guy is the original. Before Larry Elder, before all these folks.
Oh, yeah, way before Larry Elder. No, he was right up there with like the original dudes was this guy named Art Fletcher. He was like the original dude from the 60s. And he was around for the 50s with Martin Luther King's dad. Not Martin Luther King Jr. He was a hoax. And we explained that already, right? How Martin Luther King Jr. was a hoax.
No, well, we did. We touched on it, but in another episode, we got to just
we'll get into detail how the whole thing was just a big giant hoax. But
they're gonna call us like InfoWars. Like, what are you peddling here?
No, because it's true, dude. Everything I say, I can back. It's not like I'm not making anything up, but because we speak free form, freestyle.
Yeah.
But people, they have to do their own research because, like myself, I would never believe a preacher if they saved my life. Like, I just barely discovered God just recently, you know, even though everybody keeps telling me, but I'm not going to listen. Why? Because it's human nature.
Yeah.
And plus I love being carnal and it's, dude, it's a hard thing. Cause dude, like, come on, we're raised to just a massive, and the person who dies with the most toys wins. That's a bumper sticker. You know, we have a bumper sticker mentality.
But it don't even matter.
Yeah, because when you die, but that's what Egyptians did. They died with all of this treasures and for what? You know what I mean? So people could be skull fornicating you, looking for your buried treasure. That's insane. But anyway, so going back to like these black guys, they all claim to be Christian, like conservatives or whatever, but they turn their back and look what happened. Because seriously, Chinese people weren't even Christian. They should be at the bottom, and in theory, black should be at the top. But because they're the ones, because come on, I don't want to say Jesus, but Christianity freed the slaves. They're at the top. When slavery ended, the blacks were just like the Chinese. So when in 1876, the black people of 1876 were like the Chinese people of 2019. The best educated and made the most money. And now in 2009, but guess what? The Chinese are at the bottom. You know what I mean? And the blacks are at the top. Because Chinese people were Buddhists. They didn't believe in Jesus, nothing like that. They weren't Christians. They didn't even know what Christianity was. But guess what? Now you see, it's been flipped. It's the blacks are at the bottom. And now the Chinese people are at the top. And guess what? Even in China, these fuckers are believing in Jesus. It's insane. It's like,
it's true. It's true.
Impossible. Well, if you read Genesis, it tells you why. And I'm thinking, crap, I'm telling you now, we are screwed as a people because we don't even know what Jesus is. Hell, I just barely discovered that Romans thing. And I'm thinking, what the crap? This ain't right. And all these people knew this. You know, Reverend Jackson, Al Sharpton, but you know what?
Okay, Sharpton, again, like that's the thing. We picked the worst of the worst. The people that are right about this are going to be guaranteed the people you've never heard of. That's the thing, is we were like, what about what Joel Osteen said or what Al Sharpton said? It's fake.
Well, no, but here's the thing. I just don't know any good preacher. I mean, except for the guys I grew up with. Because they're the only ones, but man, their churches were so small it wasn't even funny.
Yeah,
like my
all
coach,
Baptist churches and all that.
Yeah, I don't even know what religion they were, but I knew they were Christian because they like I told you before, those guys didn't even play real music. They played I mean, it sounded like real music because man, it sounded good, but they wouldn't use no instruments, nothing. They just used clapping, chest pounding, stomping on their feet. And they just sing, and then man, but it sounded good, like a real thing. But anyway, but the
gospel
was kooky. Yeah. You know what I mean? But then I was too young and stupid to understand. But God, but it's kind of insane because my coach, he was hanging out with this one lady, and had a lady friend, and they never got married, but they never used to fool around or nothing. But after all those years, they got married, like maybe 20 years after I graduated high school. And they ended up being together. And I don't know if they're still alive or whatnot, but I'm thinking, see, that's how life should be. You spend your life with somebody. And, like they love track. Yeah. They love track and field. And they just, they help these kids like me grow up into being productive. And that was their life, their entire life. I don't want to say their names, but, but dude, I think that's how you're supposed to live life. You know what I mean? It's like how they did it. But then at the same time, like, I just wish they would have been more aggressive with their religious beliefs and then really teach people what was in the Bible, because, like I remember, these Samoans, they believe in Jesus and stuff like that. And I remember scaring the hell out of a couple of them because they were like, oh my God, every time I walked into the room, it's like, no, Dreg he's evil. He says all these things. I'm afraid and I don't want to go to hell. And I think the devil's going to come and all kinds of crazy stuff. And then, the coach would be all like, nah, he just believes in a certain way, But you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
that makes sense.
Broke things down. He was too passive with his, belief system. I don't know.
But that's the thing is, I feel like when you understand Christianity more, you strike me as somebody who would be very, very fundamental to it, like fundamentalist. Like the day that happens, it's just like, wait a minute, because that's the thing, is there's a lot of lukewarm Christianity that happens, and that's what you're talking about, is not. And that's also unfortunately where Christianity gets the bad stigma, is like all these, crazy pastors that go out and do what you just did, like, oh, how come you never broke it down and like screamed at us about it? I mean, that's what you're describing.
Well, but the thing is like this, I already know me. I'm a bad, evil man. And so, but here's the thing, like, at least I can admit it. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing. Not everybody's supposed to be a leader. And I guarantee you that, not because, like, in my heart, I don't care about the little people. I really don't. It's not in me to. I'm not that guy. But it's the truth. I could admit it. But that's the thing. Christian people have to start believing in those little people. And that was the whole thing too, because a lot of these guys don't understand the role of government. They really don't.
Right.
The role of government is exactly like the role of the churches. You're supposed to help the retarded. You're supposed to help the mentally ill. You're not supposed to help some able-bodied dude. That's why like the monks, those Buddhist monks are always looking out for handouts and stuff like that. They wouldn't need handouts if they ever got a job. You know what I mean? Because like the one thing I'll say, like, because I remember this one Muslim dude used to tell me, he goes, all these dudes praying, they're not going to account for nothing because, Muhammad, some guy came up to Muhammad and he goes, hey, I'm praying all the time. Isn't that going to be good? He's like, no, because, and then Muhammad told the guy always praying. He's like, yeah, when you're praying, everybody's working, carrying your weight, and you become useless. But that's true.
Well, it's because you're thinking there's no execution after the prayer. You're not putting in the work and all of that.
No, but those monks, like those Buddhist monks,
yeah.
Well, all of the monks I've ever met were the Thai monks, but those Thai monks, they make no money. They don't work.
Yeah.
Their job is just to, even the king bows to those guys. And then they just give them money, give them food, and that's how those guys survive. And I'm thinking, man, see, that ain't right. Because you know what I mean? You could be a criminal and all of a sudden you're a monk and that's the best scam ever. You know what I mean? So I always thought that religion was just a scam, because growing up, the church has never helped me, but I didn't realize that my coach was the church. That was his church. His church, I mean, even though he had a real job, he was a teacher, and then he coached us at, after school. He would drive us here, but that was his church activity. You know what I mean? So like churches like that, but he never bragged. See, that was the thing. That's another flaw of Christianity. You guys don't brag. You guys need to brag because people need to know who's the leaders and who's not. You know what I'm saying? And that's the fundamental.
Not for our glory, it's for God's glory. That's why Christians don't brag about it.
Like
no, I mean, like, that's how it goes. That's just what.
No, but that's not what it means. For. If you,
I see where you're coming from, but
because it's not kind words. It's not. I'm not thanking you. I'm just telling you a fact. And if you're saying that to be, you're misunderstanding what pride is. Pride is what Jesse Jackson does. Oh, dude, like
pride is also the devil's downfall.
Yeah, well, see that I don't know about that, but because seriously, the devil's thriving. It's the truth. All these people, like I'll never forget. I don't want to say his name, but it's a 3-letter word, Samoan name. But that dude, he like when he called me the devil, and I at the beginning I used to laugh, but now as an adult, I'm thinking, why would he say that? You know what I mean? It's like, why would
starting to make sense now?
Well, yeah, kind of, because it's like because I'm not surprised, but because I was always of the belief that, people are not promiscuous when they're ugly, because they're ugly. When you're ugly, your choices are very slim. But no, it's not. It's just as plentiful as a good-looking dude. It's just the quality of woman is going to match you. So, if you're ugly, you're going to be with a lot of ugly broads, and that's just how it works. But these dudes were not promiscuous people. Like Samoans, they weren't promiscuous. They really weren't. They don't go through like a lot of women. They just stick with their one girlfriend, and that's that. And I think it's because of their faith. But you don't really hear much about Samoans because they don't want really, you know what I mean? It's like they have a lot of peace that Americans don't have. And I believe it's because of their Christianity. But I don't know much. I mean, because I haven't talked to anybody. Like, the only Samoans I know now are, like, the dudes that just get out of prison and, you know what I mean, like the old school dudes. I don't know anybody that's, you know, because one of my boys, and he used to tell me this too all the time. He was if I tell him, well, anyway, so one of my friends was the first cop in a major city who was Samoan. I ran into him, and he was my boy. And he still lived by the code, right? So, you know, even though he was a cop, you know, whatever, don't matter. But, you know, one day I rolled up on him. He goes, look, he goes, even though I got my wedding ring on, he goes, my protection, man, you still make me go down the path I don't want to go down.
Yeah, women are everywhere.
And I'm like, and I was like, no, I said, nah, I said, I won't do that to you, man, because it's in our respect, Jen.
Yeah.
But you know, but he's still a good friend of mine to this day. It's
that's really good to hear, and it's good to kind of, you know, tie it all together. We do have to wrap this up. So what are some of your closing thoughts and summarizing?
I don't think we hit enough into it about, oh man, I swear to God.
We got to split it up. So we'll talk about it tomorrow. People are tuning in.
Because we got to get into the aspects of how Asians just give away their rights, because for whatever reasons, they're at the top and they're acting like they're at the bottom still. And it's insane. Like, it's the truth. Like, in 1876, blacks were on the top.
Yeah.
But then they gave up their faith in 1913. And seriously, every black person used to vote Republican, which was the conservative party, which was the Christian party, because this country is a Christian country, not a Jewish country. Not because they say Judeo-Christian values and bullshit like that. It's not. Everything comes out of that stupid Romans. Everything can be.
You're very fixated on that. It's funny.
Well, I don't know anything else about the Christian Bible, but that Romans is tight. I mean, you can't get around it. It's I bet you that dude was a lawyer. I bet you money. But anyway, it's not Judeo-Christian. Everybody keeps saying that. Oh, it has nothing to do with the Jewish Bible. The Jewish Bible, you know, the first couple of books is just technology, science.
Right.
And then the rest is just warped stuff. But the thing is, that whole thing about giving up the carnal mind and I know parables of Jesus, like what Jesus was saying, and it all ties in. I'm telling you now, we are a Christian country. When black people, they were freed. That's why they're at the top.
Right.
Asians were not freed, and they were at the bottom. Now, Christians are like synonymous with Asian people now. And blacks are just considered to be like, you know, demon-possessed, you know, people on drugs. But we didn't get into that because we'll
get into it into tomorrow's episode. Let's just extensively dive that down, because the thing is, after a certain point, people stop listening. So let's save it for that show. But
we really need a 3-hour radio show.
No, I know it'll get there. It'll get there slowly but surely. But no, thank you for listening, you guys, and for tuning in. Yes. Stay tuned for tomorrow's episode.
I want to say thanks to that. Give a shout out to that dude who wrote you.
Yeah. Let's give a shout out to somebody who talked about Professor Dreg in such a nice, way.
But I ain't gonna do it, because flattery will get you nowhere with me. I don't care.
Fang. Shout out to you, buddy. Thanks for commenting and listening. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Take care.